Good morning. My name is Zara West, and I am the audit manager here with Mitzi E. Sullivan, CPA. I also work in our accounting consulting and QBO consulting side of our practice. So we wanted to create a new series for you guys and talk a little bit about the common QBO errors that we see when working with clients. So I want to kick off this series and talk a little bit about uncategorized expenses, uncategorized income, and uncategorized asset. So an important thing to mention here is that QuickBooks has what's called a smart matching technology. And so what this means is when you start working with your bank feed, QuickBooks will learn how you code your transactions. And subsequently, the more that you work with the bank feed, it will start to auto-categorize those transactions as they come across. So this is definitely a great feature, but it also has its limitations. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So if we use this sample company here as an example, we can see that sitting in our bank feed, we have a few transactions that are listed as uncategorized income and uncategorized expense. So what this means is that this is the first time that a transaction like this has come across the bank feed. So QuickBooks has no history with this transaction, so it is unsure how to categorize it. So it just defaults to that uncategorized income and uncategorized expense account. So in order to ensure that you avoid that error of coding those items to the income or uncategorized income and expense account, you want to make sure that you, one, select that transaction. It drops it down here where then you can see what came through the bank detail, so you know what that transaction was for. And you can then select the vendor or customer, depending upon the transaction type, and change the category. So here we can see via the bank detail that this was from A1 rental. So we're just going to start typing in here. And we can see that QuickBooks has no history with this vendor, so we actually need to create it. And we can do it right here from this screen. We can just hit add. You'll have a little drop down that'll pop up where you can change the type, so vendor or customer, and then just hit save. Now we want to ensure that our category is changed so we properly categorize that expense. So we can just type in here, let's see if we have, they do have an equipment rental. So based upon the detail, that is an accurate category. And now we can just hit add. And here we can see actually a really great example of that smart matching technology. So QuickBooks now has history of a transaction that is similar. So it automatically coded this next transaction as A1 rental for the vendor and then the category as equipment rental. And so we can go ahead and hit add here. Another thing about rules. So the more that you work with your bank feed, QuickBooks does try to suggest rules for you. This is another really great feature of QuickBooks, but it definitely has some limitations and you want to err on the side of caution. And the reason for this is, for example, say you don't always purchase or we'll say rent equipment from A1 rental. Sometimes you're actually purchasing fixed assets or you're actually purchasing tools or supplies or, whatever the expense may be. If you create that rule, whenever a similar transaction, with the same bank detail comes across that bank feed, it's going to automatically categorize that as equipment rental. And so at the end of the year or whichever frequency that you're actually preparing your financial statements, you won't get an accurate depiction of your expense categories. So we always just advise whenever you're creating rules, generally use these for like transactions. So we'll say, utilities. So something that you're always going to, that utility payment for, we'll say, or telephone, you're always going to pay AT&T and it's always going to be a telephone expense. That would be a really good example of when you could create a rule for that. So I'm just going to exit out of this. And another point that I want to make here is you want to be able to use your financial statements as a cost control monitoring device. And so if you are working, through your bank feed and you're just trying to get all your coding caught up in order to look at your financial statements, or, to have us prepare your financial statements, or even for tax return purposes, if you go through here and you just quickly hit add to get all those out of there and everything coded, when it comes time to actually look at your financial statements, you're not going to get an accurate depiction of the revenue that you're generating. Say you have different sides to your business, so it's sales or service, and then you're not going to get an accurate picture of what it actually costs to generate that revenue if you have those items sitting in uncategorized income and uncategorized expense. So I want to show you that. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm just going to hit add, and add a few expenses. And then I'm going to pull up a profit and loss statement. So I did that. Sorry, I'm doing that quickly by just going to reports, under standard, clicking on profit and loss. We can see that this is in our favorite section because we want to access this pretty frequently. I want to change the report period to this year, and I'm going to hit run report. So just quickly looking at the income side of things, we can see we have that $255 sitting in uncategorized income. So say you're preparing, these financial statements at the end of the year, and you want to know, okay, well, is landscaping services, really a good revenue generator for my company, or should I start transitioning more into design? And so if we have this sitting in uncategorized income and it's not properly categorized as the income item, we're not getting a good depiction of the revenue that we've actually generated that year. And then the same goes for the expenses. We go down here. We can see that we've got $893 sitting in that uncategorized expense, but actually maybe it was maintenance and repair or equipment repairs, and you've kind of been thinking about, well, hey, or we'll say, for example, equipment rental. It should have been equipment rental, and you've been thinking, hey, instead of spending all this money renting equipment, maybe I should use that money and invest in the purchase of that equipment so I can actually depreciate that equipment over the useful life. So that is the importance of making sure that you code from the bank feed, making sure that those items are properly categorized so you can use your financial statement as a cost monitoring device. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Like I said, we will be doing these videos weekly and talking about different topics that we think would be really beneficial. So we'll see you next time. Bye.